They would have not built that. It's got that many extra seats than they would have ever needed in the first place. We are going to be finding out why no one wants to host the Olympics. This is going to be by the channel search party. There's going to be a link in the description section down below for that. I don't know why the like animation isn't there, but I clicked like on the video. It just doesn't show it up for some reason. You know, I've heard about the Olympics before where I didn't really do like any deep dives into it, but I've heard that like the cities like almost get destroyed in the process of building it up for the Olympics, right? Just for the Olympic Games to happen. And then afterwards, the stuff gets neglected and abandoned. I've seen a few videos in the past where people go and like explore like abandoned Olympic places and stuff in different countries. But anyways, that's not what we're here for. We're here for this. Why no one wants to host the Olympics. We're going to find out right here.
Down the back stretch. It's September 2017, and members of the International Olympic Committee are gathered to pick the city that will host the 2024 Olympic Games. The biggest decision this group makes. They've put representatives from the two competing cities on stage for their announcement.
With the unanimous decision we took,
but everyone here already knows who won.
Please raise your hand.
Every 4 years, more than 5 million people attend the Olympics, and over 3 billion watch it on TV. It's a once-in-a-generation opportunity for one city to show off. And the competition has typically been fierce. 12 cities applied to host the 2004 Games before the IOC picked Athens, Greece. 10 applied for 2008, won by Beijing, China. But since then, interest has been waning. 9 cities applied for 2012, then 7, then 5, and for 2024, only 2 were left when it was time for a vote. So the IOC did.
Wow. Okay, so the rumors that I've heard are probably true then, because clearly there's some issues going on when you got less and less interest, you know. And the Olympic Games is something, I mean, it's been originally, you know, a couple thousand years ago, right, with the ancient Greeks or something. I should actually check into the history of that because I don't know for sure, you know, all that. There was no reason for me at any moment in my life to jump into that, you know, just what I heard, of course, that it's an old thing. It's been happening forever. I think it stopped for a while, then it was brought back. I'm not entirely sure. That might be on the list to do soon, but it's interesting that there's only 2 of these places left, or like two cities that are actually like, hey, you know, we want to do it. Los Angeles is a dump. Maybe they're trying to do it because it'll help build up their infrastructure for a short amount of time or something, and then all the abandoned buildings they could just ship all the homeless to after the Olympic Games is over, right?
Did something it's never done before.
Paris 24, Los Angeles 28.
What?
The IOC was so concerned that nobody would bid to host the games in 2028 that it simultaneously awarded the games 2024 to Paris and 2028 to Los Angeles. There used to be strong demand to host. Now there isn't.
So that's a way of locking somebody in and being like, okay, you won, but next time. Wow. Okay.
The Olympics are the most prestigious sports event in the world. Why doesn't anyone want to host it anymore?
We're going to find out. I haven't watched any of the Olympics yet. I mean, in the past, but not like this year, the 2024, I haven't checked anything out yet.
So the Olympics have actually had this problem before. They originally came up with this idea of rotating the games around to different cities back in 1896 because they had to.
We didn't have international jet travel and we didn't have international telecommunications.
Andrew Zimbalist wrote a book about the economics of hosting sports mega events like the Olympics.
So in late 1800s, is that when it was, if it was brought back, again, I don't know for sure. If it was brought back, is that when it was brought back, was the late 1800s, when they're like, hey, there's this old Greek thing people would do, you call it the Olympics, people would compete from different countries, et cetera, let's do it again. I don't know. Let me know.
So it was necessary in order to spread the games internationally and get the whole world to participate and enjoy them.
As the games grew, the IOC kept this tradition, eventually developing a competition where cities would submit bids and it would vote on a winner. But when it opened bidding for the 1984 games, not a single city wanted to host because the last few hadn't gone very well. Local political protests had turned violent during the 1968 Games in Mexico City, and terrorists killed 11 Israeli athletes at the 72 Munich Games.
Jeez. I mean, there's always those bad few that have to ruin it for everybody else. Am I not right?
Invade the Olympic Village, taking 9 Israeli athletes hostage and killing 2 others in their room.
Both incidents.
And the thing about that, though, is they targeted Israelis, so that's clearly this whole religious war that's going on. That's been going on for a long time, still going on today, of course. Nothing to do with the Olympics. That was just their opportunity and their chance to do that, I guess, right?
Showed cities that hosting could be politically risky or even deadly. When construction problems and corruption led Montreal to spend more than 13 times their budget, they began to view it as financially risky too.
Gee, so do they not make the money back though? Because you would think, I mean, they're spending that's a lot of money. I mean, that's a lot of money, but it's also the Olympics, right? You're hosting the Olympics. You're gonna be boosting the city's economy. That's probably why Los Angeles wants to get on the list, because you've seen Skid Row, Los Angeles, the homeless population, everything. The city's a dump, right? They need money. So that would, you would think that would bring business. Of course, it would crash after the Olympics is gone and all the tourists leave, but
So in the late 70s, the IOC was barreling towards disaster until one city offered to save them.
Hollywood.
Under one condition: Los Angeles did not want to spend a lot of money. To do that, it offered to use venues it already had instead of build new ones. The LA Coliseum, where the USC football team played, the Forum, where the Lakers played, UCLA's gymnasium and tennis center, and the athletes could just stay in the college dorm rooms. Since the IOC didn't have a choice, it said yes, and was soon glad it did.
Oh, wow. I've seen that in a clip, the flying Red Bull Rocket Man thing. I need to check that out.
The '84 LA Games were a success in almost every way, but especially financially. It only cost around $1 billion in 2015 dollars, and LA even made a profit.
So they normally don't. Okay, so what do we got here? We got estimated sports-related cost of games. So I guess I don't know what the
billion
different
in
colors.
2015 dollars, and LA even made a profit.
What's the other colors? You got red and blue. What are the different significance of, because you don't see the blue in '84. But look, you can see the cost has been rising. But then, of course, LA had their own equipment, used their stuff, didn't build anything new. So it was losing everybody else some money before that. That's interesting. With all the people, you would just think there'd be a lot more tourist dollars,
This should have become the model for future Olympic host cities, but instead, it sparked the problem that is plaguing the Olympics today.
Really?
It's interesting how many of these sports and politics stories really boil down to economics. If you recall, the Premier League story is a story about a warped economic system. The NFL is so successful because it created a new economic model for sports leagues.
LA did such a good job hosting the 1984 Olympics that it re-inspired cities to want to host again. For the 1992 Games, 6 cities submitted bids, then 6 again for '96, 8 for 2000, then a whopping 11 for 2004. As more cities competed, the IOC regained leverage over them again.
Okay.
But instead of sticking to the LA model, it began demanding more. Between 1992 and 2020, the IOC added dozens of new sports to the Games.
Okay, so that's driving the cost up, of course. So you got blue is athletics, light blue is combat sports, red is outdoor pursuits, a little bit of a lighter red. My monitor might be not the right color, but racket, target, fielding, and then the greenish is like invasion games. And then finally, a burnt orange is dance/gym. Okay. Interesting. Whoops.
This required more venues and housing for more athletes,
Yeah.
which host cities were primarily responsible for paying for. As the competition intensified, cities felt increasing pressure to make their bids more attractive. The most effective way to do that was to build new venues. Sydney built 15 new venues plus housing for 10,000 athletes. Athens built 22 new venues, and Beijing built 12.
Okay, so back to what I was saying earlier. I was under the impression that the Olympic Games, that the Olympics organization, whatever, is paying for these infrastructure things to go in place to host the Olympic Games. Evidently, that's not the case, right? The city themselves have to pay for it, and that's why LA made the profit, because they just used their the resources they already had, right? The infrastructure that was already available. So, also back to what I was saying with the money thing. I was saying like LA might, be wanting to take advantage of that, and then also would have the infrastructure left to help house the homeless, to get them off the streets, right? Which would be a great benefit. But if the Olympic situation, organization, whatever, right, aren't the ones that's covering the cost, LA itself is, then that wouldn't make sense. But it would, because they're using their own infrastructure, and the last time they hosted the games, they made a profit. So they want to do that again. They could reuse the same infrastructure they already have and once again make a profit, and maybe even more so this time around. So just to clear up the misinformation, not really misinformation, just uneducated, remarks in the beginning.
All of this construction made hosting the games really, really expensive. This chart shows how the cost of the games skyrocketed over the last 30 years, reaching between $10 and $25 billion in the last decade.
I want to add one big caveat to this chart, though. It only includes sports-related costs to the games. It doesn't include things like new public transportation or development projects that most all these cities spent money on for.
Yep, and then you got maintenance costs, people, heightened police, people on duty, right, because of the increased activity of foot traffic, people in taxis driving around, some more taxi drivers, more of everything.
With the Olympics, if we include some of those costs, these bars are actually way higher. So, for example, some estimate that Beijing spent more like $45 billion for their 2008 Summer Games. Russia spent more like $51 in 2014, and Tokyo's bill is more like $35 billion. No matter what number you use, though, all of these cities went way over their initial budget, which the bidding process incentivizes them to keep artificially low.
What they have to do is make initial statements about the intentions and the plans that are very reduced. Once the politicians say, yeah, okay, we'll go along with this, then they start adding the bells and whistles. And those can be very, very substantial.
The revenue cities generate from ticket sales, TV contracts, and sponsorships only cover a fraction of these costs, meaning these governments and really their taxpayers are on the hook for the rest.
So it makes complete sense that less and less and less cities want to do it. But again, LA they're just going to reuse their own stuff a bit, just like they did before. Hearing thunder outside. I didn't know it was going to be storming, but I guess it is.
It doesn't look like a good economic deal.
But host cities have known for decades that they'll likely lose money in the short term. Instead, many have been told that hosting the Olympics is an investment that will pay off in the future.
And I guess we're going to find out how so.
Okay, so this is the IOC's webpage where they list the benefits of hosting the games. And they use this word legacy a lot. And by legacy, they mean things that will continue to benefit your city long after the Olympics are over.
Okay. Take sports facilities. Beijing justified spending around $460 million on this new 90,000-seat stadium by planning for a local pro soccer team to use it after the Olympics. London did the same when it built this stadium. At first, seems like a good idea. Other legacy projects are meant to benefit even more people. Russia spent $8.7 billion on a new rail and highway link into Sochi for its Winter Games. And Rio de Janeiro spent $4 billion on a new subway line connecting a beach community to its Olympic Center.
Yeah, so, I mean, some of this stuff's probably good, right? I don't see how it wouldn't be.
The most commonly touted legacy benefit is that hosting an Olympics is a great way to kickstart your city's growth.
What historically came out of the public relations with regard to the Olympics was that this was the most wonderful thing that could ever happen to a city. It puts your city on the world map, so it will increase tourism, it will increase commerce, it will increase foreign investment. And that story turns out not to be true.
And see, the thing about it is, like France this year, it's like, oh, the Olympics put your country on the world's map. We all know about France. Didn't take the Olympics to hear about France. Just saying. And with all the protests and riots you guys have over there, you make sure that we know about you. It's not that hard to know about France, just saying.
Let's start with tourism. A 2004 study found that after experiencing a bump in tourism leading up to their respective games, Atlanta, Sydney, and Seoul all saw it fall afterwards. In his book, Andrew cites a 1996 study on 3 Olympic Winter Games that found that the long-term impact on tourism was between non-existent and very modest, and a 2010 study that found little evidence of any benefit to tourism of hosting an Olympic Games, and considerable evidence of damage.
Yeah, so doesn't do you any good. It's like, okay, yeah, we'll try to make it where you can justify spending all this money for this new stadium, but for what? You're not going to make profit back hosting the games. Your city's already on the map. You don't need the publicity. So then what? Okay, cool. A local, team can use it afterwards. Awesome, but at the end of the day, all you need is a patch of grass and a couple of nets and some footballs to kick around, right? You don't need a 40-some billion-dollar stadium or whatever the astronomical cost was. Some cheap bleachers, some grass. I mean, you get what I'm saying. It's not justified enough, right? They're spending this insane amount of money and they're like, oh, but we could do this and that. If the Olympic Games weren't there, you wouldn't have spent all that money for the local team. You wouldn't have. You would have built them a simpler, more modest stadium and save some money and maybe put some of that extra money into some other infrastructure that's going to benefit the city. But instead, they're all caught up in like, oh, that's the Olympics, though. But evidently, it does nothing but possibly even cause damage. So very, very interesting.
In other words, being on TV can backfire.
If the weather is particularly too warm, or if it's too cold, if there are security incidents, if there are bad stories about the traffic, some cities are able to maybe help their image, but other cities are hurting their image.
Many legacy infrastructure investments haven't paid off either. Russia's rail project is now considered an epic failure. And Andrew argues that while Rio's subway line benefits some residents, what the city really needed was a line serving the lower income neighborhoods inland.
Exactly what I was saying earlier. If it wasn't for the Olympics, you wouldn't have done that. Why would you have spent $4 billion putting that little, whatever there that's really only going to be benefiting the high influx of traffic and stuff during the Olympic Games? Afterwards, it's just a big highway network that's, so if the Olympic Games never came there, they wouldn't have done that. They could have took the money, like the video saying that we're reacting to, learning to, first time, whatever, right? They could have spent it there. If you enjoy this video, first time watcher, whatever, please hit subscribe. Help me get to that 100,000 subscriber goal. Hit like on the video, comment, interact, reply to somebody else's comment, whatever you want to do. Let's check this out.
But that's not where the Olympics were.
The typical case was that the IOC comes along and they say, we need these 30 venues. We want you to put them in a way so that transportation is facilitated and other conveniences are allowed. And so what the city would have to do is contort itself in order to accommodate the IOC.
Empty stadiums are a particularly visible sign of this mismatch. That Beijing Stadium had about 80,000 more seats than what the local soccer team could fill, so it backed out. Now the stadium sits mostly empty, costing the city some $10 million a year to maintain.
Exactly. They would have not built that. It's got that many extra seats than they would have ever needed in the first place. Completely built for absolutely no reason besides to host the games, and then the games try to justify, oh, but you can use it for your local team. Sure, but the local team doesn't need that. I'm sorry.
This is what's called a white elephant, and there are now dozens of them across Olympic host cities. These are venues left over from the Athens 2004 games, and ESPN found that 12 out of 27 venues in Rio de Janeiro had not held an event a year after it hosted the Olympics. For many residents, white elephants are evidence that hosting the games is a waste of money.
You know, and another thing about it is it, you know, since the building is so massive, you would have to have such a large event going on afterwards to even justify turning the lights on and running the place, because the cost of operating such a massive place can't be cheap. And after the games, whatever local events or whatever's going on isn't enough to really justify the cost of using that venue, so they go under, I believe.
Idea that had been out there forever and ever. This is wonderful news for the city. They get to do this. No, more often than not, it's going to be the opposite.
By 2015, city residents were ready to do something about it. The IOC had 6 cities bidding for the 2024 games until protests forced Boston and Hamburg to drop out. A new mayor in Rome fulfilled a promise to shut down its bid. Then more than 260,000 people signed a petition that led Budapest to drop out as well. It left the IOC with just 2 bidders, and once again, little leverage. The IOC has since passed reforms that it says reduce the cost of hosting, largely by requiring hosts to use existing and temporary venues, like LA did back in 1984, and allowing them to partner with other cities. As of now, Paris doesn't look like it will blow its budget, and LA's organizing committee is saying that the city can again pull off an on-budget Olympics. But the question is, if they do, could it spark another bidding war?
I don't know if we'll go into a big cycle like we did after the 84 games. I mean, do think it's possible that there'll be a small turn. It'll appear less undesirable than it has.
The IOC has also stopped taking bids and instead negotiates with cities privately. It picked Milan and Cortina, Italy, over Stockholm for the 2026 Winter Games, and it gave Brisbane, Australia, the 2032 Summer Games. But some are arguing for a more permanent solution.
So they're already doing it ahead, like 2032 Summer Games and stuff. We're only in 2024, guys. Come on. They're that desperate, huh?
I think it's perfectly plausible to think about
this fly is bugging me.
building the Olympic Shangri-La with its 35 or 40 venues for the Summer Games, smaller number for the Winter Games, in one place.
Some believe Greece, the historical home of the Olympics, would make a good permanent host. Others have mentioned LA, since it has so many venues and has done so well in the past. A permanent spot would eliminate white elephant projects, save cities from going into debt, and reduce the game's environmental footprint. But it could also reduce much of the excitement around each new Olympics.
You know, what about a rotating system? Okay, so you got Greece, right? You got Los Angeles, which they said is a good choice. You know, maybe find a couple more that's just excellent host cities that's already got the infrastructure. They don't have to do nothing crazy. And to keep it from going stale or losing interest, you rotate it out. Olympics are every 4 years. So by the time you get to the third person, you're 12 years out. So you're going to have new interest, new people, you know, that are going to want to go to that place. And it's looking forward to it rotating into whatever city that they're excited about going to. That would be a thing.
It's not going to be easy to go to a model that makes environmental sense and economic sense. But I do think it makes sense to talk about it and put it out there as someplace that we should be heading.
Depending on how the next few Olympics go, it might be the only direction left.
What do you guys think about this, actually? Because I think it's almost like a scam, right? It's almost like a scam to where they coerce you into, you know, all these great things for your city, but it's really not. And it's like, for what? And really, it's like, a lot of people aren't interested in the Olympics as a whole. They're interested in this particular sport, right? Or this category of sport. Why couldn't everything be split up? You got your, you know, stuff could be here. Like, there's infrastructure around the planet for everything. Why can't you have like your snowboarding events happen at this place and your skiing events happen there and blah, 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 because they're set up for that, right? And then who's got the most football stadiums? Do your football stuff there, right? Who's got the most ski jumps? Do your ski jumps competitions there. Why does it have to be one place, right? everything's done online anyways. They could just mesh it together in editing, stream it together, whatever. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. You guys have a super fun, awesome day. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye.